Unmute, start video. Right. Michael, can you hear us?
I can. Sorry, I
Okay.
forgot to turn my microphone on.
No worries, no worries. We have the basic amount to be able to start the meeting. We've got our 5 for the quorum. I only know of one person who said they weren't coming, so you guys should be good to go. Good.
Okay, so I guess we will start with the approval of the minutes from last month's meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the August 9th minutes as submitted.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Do we have any public hearings? Public hearings. Right. Do we have any visitor comments? Okay. So moving to new business, we do have a demolition request.
You'll have in your packet, there is a staff memo, and I apologize. It sounds like the link that was posted didn't include my memo if you saw it online, and we'll fix that for future. It's a demolition request on 149 Cottage. Existing single-family dwelling was built in 1947. We had no historic records or any information regarding anything in particular on it. It's a 1-story bungalow. County has it at about 784 square feet. The applicant did just purchase it with the intent to demolish it for a single family home, and the previous property owner had owned it for about 30 years. You'll see the documentation throughout here. There is at the end of the packet the housing summary, which you'll see has some exterior items that would need to be done for a basic occupancy, and there are photos of the interior and the exterior of the structure.
I was looking for how long it's been vacant in the paperwork.
My
Couldn't see anything.
No, my understanding is not very long. Yeah, there's a house that was just new house just constructed on Cottage, and we usually find that when there's a new house that gets constructed, there ends up being others around that kind of start to say, hey, well, what about my house? So we don't normally, unless we have some specific records that we know it's been vacant for a significant period of time, that would be the only way that we would have put some sort of documentation.
Just thought the interior looked pretty good and
Yep.
thought it hasn't been neglected
Yeah.
recently.
Yeah,
Yeah,
The AC unit is missing.
Right, and no
meter's
gas
been
meter.
removed, No electric. So
right.
Something's been going on.
That's why I wondered if it had been
Yeah.
sitting that way for a long time.
no, my understanding is not. There has been someone living in it. So if there's any other questions, staff didn't find any particular reasons to not approve the demolition.
My only reaction to the pictures was, how many houses do we have in Webster that are tiny like this that would be appealing to people that would buy at this price? And
And that's our struggle.
I hate to see us lose that option.
I did notice there was something in the applicant's letter that said that it wasn't the highest and best use for the land. In my head, I thought my
Right.
personal opinion is affordable housing is a pretty high.
Exactly,
use.
exactly.
So,
That's what I was struck with.
Yeah, well, there, unfortunately, in this venue, there's nothing we can do about that, but we can pursue it elsewhere.
Well, it's in poor condition now. It failed the inspection, so I don't know what. I don't think anybody's gonna spend the money to make it livable for the amount they would get out of it.
Anyone have any other questions regarding the property? Does anyone have a motion to approve the demolition request?
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Is there
Aye.
anyone opposed? So that brings us to our old business, which is the Lestron Homes and potential historic district nomination. I was not present at the last meeting, but I know the letter was discussed and we did have a plan to send out a letter to the current owners of the Lestron Homes to invite them to our October meeting. So I guess we can kind of continue discussing that.
Yeah, I think, I'm reading the letter in the packet and that looks good. It has a positive tone like we discussed and, has the date and time of the information session. I would say that, I would just a tweak that it is a public information session. It's not a public hearing. So we want to clarify that, but, and then also too, some of the previous letters that have a little information about the Lestron are nice too, but I think you can just make a decision this evening and move forward and get this out and then prepare for the content of our hearing or our information session, I should say.
Yeah, I like the attachment of Lestron home history. That way you can read the letter and don't worry about it, whatever. Still get the information, not through it, so.
Yeah,
So Mara, how does this work if we approve the letter this evening with any additional edits to it? As far as having it print on, I'm assuming letterhead.
It'll be put on our city letterhead. I have staff that will be able to merge the letter with the proper information and get it out in the mail.
Okay, so you don't need any of us to volunteer to stuff envelopes and
No.
mail.
This one is an easy one. This is not, yeah.
12 too, right?
Yeah.
13, that's the.
Is it 13 or is it 12? I got 13.
It says
I'll
13 on the attachment.
That was my addition.
we have to go back and look at my last packet. I had an updated sheet in the last packet. Sorry, I don't have it with me.
there was
We used to have 21.
there was a written list on the back of one of these letters. Is that
Yes.
the most current?
Yeah, that should be the most current. So 8, 21, 13.
Sorry, too, yeah.
And do know I did reach out and gave a heads up to Mike Blaze that a letter should be coming and he was very interested.
Good, great. That's good news.
So yes, normally I think in a previous packet, it would not actually be, usually it's listed as, we don't necessarily have a particular signature. We just list it as from the Historic Preservation Commission. And most times we can just put the list of the names of all the commission members and then no one actually physically signs it. Okay, if everyone's okay with that.
Sure.
I have a basic question. Can some people refuse to be part of the district or once we make it a district, is everybody in?
So the way that it works is there is a public hearing. So once this process and you have the information session and continue pulling together what you need for the actual public hearing. A public hearing is held before the Historic Preservation Commission with a recommendation to council. The public hearing is then held before the city council. Those are all given all the proper notifications and other things like that. Anyone has a right to come and speak at that. They don't get to just pull themselves out of it.
Okay.
But if they have a strong opinion that they do not believe that this district should move forward, that's for the council to make that final decision.
Okay, it's all or nothing.
Yeah, it kind of is an all or nothing. We did have, and I think I put it in a previous packet, an example from when we did the little commercial district on Marshall. And I know, if I remember correctly, I was here, but I wasn't really a part of those hearings until it got to council. And we had a couple people who weren't, it's not that they wanted to be removed, they were just a little wary of it, and they, spoke about their concerns about what impact it might have on their properties. But I think that no one specifically went, yes, you must remove me. And it did go forward with all properties within the district.
And you did mention in your email to us for this meeting that one came up with back taxes or.
Yes, there was one that showed up, and I need to check and see if someone did pay. So I apologize, that was the end of August, and I meant to check on that. In fact, we might be able to check it. The way that it works is that if someone did happen to just pay that one last year, it goes back off the list. Let's see. States. It was 118.
One of the one on Eldridge.
Yeah.
And I've got, there's a 101, 121, 124, and 125. Is what's on the list.
Feel like it was one of the Eldridge ones. No, this might be it. Nope, not that one. Let's go back. What were the other ones? One.
We've got 101, did you? Oh, you're on the wait.
Nope, not that one either.
121.
Nope, that one's beyond housing.
124.
We did 1, 2,
We already
4.
did do 124.
125.
It would be the last one. Of course. Of course.
See, someone bought it at tax sale.
Oh.
If it shows that they paid all 3 years of taxes on the same date. Now, they can't do anything with the property for 1 year. So there's still a 1 year time frame that gives the ability of the original owner to try to get it back. So there won't be anything that they can do. So we'll have to just keep an eye on it.
So this letter will go to that owner there, not the new.
So what we do is when we send our letters out, there's a letter mailing list that we can pull from county. And it does both the letter to the current property owner, and then if there was another mailing address on it. So we can check and see with St. Louis County on that in regards to that. Okay, yeah.
And so I guess also if we approve the letter tonight, and get this mailed out, obviously, the information session would be at next month's meeting. So between now and then, do we have to come up with a agenda within that information time period? Is it? So when would that be? Would it be like when there would be a public hearing during like our October meeting?
No, during, so it's definitely not a public hearing.
Right,
It's
but I
literally-
mean, like, in what order?
Oh, it would just be a new business item.
Okay,
We would get if there was any demolitions, those would go first. We always take care of those first. But it would just be a new business item. And then hopefully if anyone's here, kind of talk through. So maybe think through what you might want to talk through. I am able to put together a couple slides on the process per the code of how the hearings work. But we probably want to talk to them about more than just that.
I jotted down some notes for myself about maybe an overall introduction about the purpose of the public information session and clarify that it's different than a public hearing. And then an overview of what a local historic designation does and what it doesn't do. And then maybe review some frequently asked questions and information that dispels common misconceptions. And then, information that Mara, you said you have about the city's process, and let people know at this time, there's no definite timeline. And then after people have that information, then maybe open it up to questions and answers. So maybe that kind of overall information as an introduction might answer a lot of what's on people's minds.
Might want to go into next steps, but I guess that'd be part of the whole process
Yeah.
then. Yeah.
Who wants to take on? I will provide you with process slides. I will be able to explain the process. Who else wants to take on other portions of this?
So anybody who would show up to next month's meeting in regards to this, is there any way would we put together any kind of a packet for them to have to take with them? As far as,
If you all want to, yep, definitely can.
Do we have existing materials?
So we've talked about this before, and Michael, I'm sorry, I didn't share the screen the last time when we were looking through stuff. Okay, so let's go to. So I know under. We do have a couple different things on benefits of historic designation. It's pretty long. It's got a number of pages, and we talked about how some of it isn't necessarily we talked about maybe trying to update that. We also have.
There's the FAQ.
Yeah, right there. And then this is the frequently asked questions. So we've talked about how we could reformat this a little bit so that it doesn't look as dated as it feels.
Mhm.
And clean it up a hair, because I know there's references to our former building commissioner in here and a few other things, but that is something that we could provide to them, which has some of the basic frequently asked questions. There's also a list of some of the other city designated historic landmarks. I'd want to make sure that that's an up-to-date list. Pretty sure it is, but I don't think we've done any other than those are all individual properties. Oh, there's one, I think that's been added since then.
do we need to define that in this letter? Because it says nominated for historic landmark status. Do we need to be more specific with like city or? Because I feel like that's gonna be a question. Are we doing this citywide?
We're just doing city.
Right, but I mean, for anybody who's attending this, I
Yeah.
think if it's stated in the letter, that might answer a question before they're here.
Mhm. I'm trying to figure out which sentence you were.
It's the end of the first paragraph and nominated for,
For. Sorry, I don't have the full code with me. I'll look at what it needs to be listed as, but yes, it would just be for city historic.
Kind of like what it has there in the subtitle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
city
just
designation as
city
an historic
designation.
landmark.
Or city designation for historic landmark status.
and I know too, Mara, you had like a folder about information that people put together in the past when we were talking about Lustron homes, specifically about Lustron homes. I don't know if we want to include anything like that to prove our point as to why we're kind of pursuing this.
So that will end up being part of the actual nomination. And I don't think, I think it's probably a waste of paper and ink for giving that to those that own the homes. Like we could give them a link to where it's available. We can link it onto the agenda. I mean, there's a bunch of other ways we could probably do it, but I would highly suggest not. It's just gonna probably end up going in the recycle bin.
We don't know how many people are going to be in attendance.
That too.
Right.
Yeah, I think I'd keep I think giving out some information is a good idea on a
Mhm.
piece of paper, but keep it kind of limited, or it's gonna be just like a pack of paper. that's-
Right, because
there's
I
so
like that
much.
we have some research about them, so yeah, if we can link it to something, I feel like that's good, because then they'll leave here and have a way to kind of educate themselves as to why this is important, if they want to.
We could discuss it a little bit, tell, kind of a brief history.
I think, yeah, that seems reasonable in our opening.
Yeah,
remarks.
I think that seems like a reasonable way to go about it. Most people respond well when they hear something kind of interesting, and these houses are interesting, so if they hear something, there's something different, they most likely kind of know their house is different, but I mean. It's
Hard to miss.
So we can definitely take all of the various articles and things that we have. We can put it all together in a PDF that includes maybe a list at the front of what all of the items are, and maybe put them in a date order of, the age. Most recent things up front and then going back later. And we can provide it as a link, and we can do it two ways. One is if people come, we can ask for their email address and we can forward that link to them. Because sometimes giving them a typewritten link,
Yeah.
it's hard to
Too
type
much
it in.
typing.
Yeah.
It would be much better to be able to like say, would you be interested? We can send you
Right.
all this great information and we can have it as a PDF linked on the website, if that works.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah,
that's a good
I feel like that
That's a
just
good
makes it a stronger case too.
Well, and all that stuff is what we're going to have to put together for the nomination in the first place.
Right.
So it's kind of doing a dual purpose. And then I did put up all of the, and went on to newspapers.com and found so like here, article from 1949, 12 Lustrons erected in Webster Groves.
A lot of them are just like sales ads.
But
they're all-
I think that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too, and there was like some political issues around it. One of the articles was very interesting. This was probably about how they like put so much
engineers
money
and-
into this idea and partnered with a politician and it went south. and-
Ooh, engineer says he's ready to mass produce 400 all steel modern homes daily.
There you go.
Wow.
But there's one,
I thought I opened every one you sent.
did you?
Maybe it's this one.
I had saved it, maybe it's in it, go back and look, but.
That's the one that says 12 were erected. Webster.
Does it say where they were? Does it say like where?
There it is.
There's
Yeah, I
the-
see Simmons.
Yeah, and
224 Simmons,
Eight.
226, 228,
Oh, and it's a little
241, 308, 232, 237. There's the old Watson one. Oh, there's the 604 Fair Oaks. There's the 44 Hart. That one came down recently. Oh, I apologize. Hold on. I keep forgetting. Sorry, Michael. Hold on. Here's
That's
three.
okay.
There you go.
It was really interesting. I mean, they talk about the features on the interior, like they had a built-in bookcase that was like a trademark and.
The cantilevered cabinets are one of the most
Yeah.
interesting things to me in the kitchens.
Isn't it that just? It's so different. because
Yeah,
every
the engineering
single thing
of
is made
those,
out of the
right.
stainless steel. Every single thing. They've all got their number, like their,
Mhm.
they got their number on them. and
So
things.
all of these, I've already been saved into our folder.
Okay.
And then we can add those to all the other, articles and things that we have. So probably figuring out who else wants to take on any other parts of these elements and then what things you might want. So I'll do a few slides on the process. If there's anything else you want in that PowerPoint, I kind of need a time frame of when people might be getting me things prior to the meeting.
I think it's the St. Louis one, the third one. Yeah,
There we go.
What's the date on that?
82.
82.
82.
There's a whole book, that looks like the front of the book too. And it's. That they discuss it, there's several theories on why people wouldn't want them. I personally think the weight had a little to do with it. In fact, I go with that theory. That's one of the theories. It's just, it wasn't the mass production of you could whip up 4 houses in a row, right? It's all that's different.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's full election.
must not have saved it, but there definitely was an interesting article about. Misappropriation of funds or,
Yeah, there's a whole
yeah,
scandal. to
that
it,
he
too.
didn't, he
The book goes on and on.
built
about
too
that.
quickly, too fast and.
Yeah.
He went way beyond promising what he couldn't deliver.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's just, it's really interesting and it's
I
kind
mean,
of
he
cool.
kept selling the idea when he
Yeah.
couldn't make them.
And the
fast
idea
enough.
was, okay, he might, but he did a good job, right? I mean, and that's the one thing I was thinking, he was kind of. It wasn't a good idea almost, like, that's why it didn't work out. That's what I kept thinking, like, in a way, was it a good idea? It didn't really work out. So he sold people on it
Mhm.
and they were willing to buy it, kind of, but they're shipping this huge, heavy thing for this
Right,
little tiny
right.
house all around the country. It was kind of, sounds a little. not like it's
Flim
a good
flam
idea.
man.
But he got
Clearly,
people
they're
to
still saving.
The book's
for the most
available
part.
at the library. if you want to
Also been
figure out-
torn down.
Right. Oh, is it?
Anybody wants to check the book out in the library for the meeting, that book's at the Webster Library.
Okay, so I just pulled up the calendar to try to figure out deadlines and other things. Of course, I just looked and that meeting is it's the first varsity district tournament softball game to end the season that day. Okay, packets, so the meeting is on the 11th. Packets would go out on the 5th. And I will tell you, there is a strong chance. That just got stuck on my calendar. But I would not be here.
Can we change it to November?
We could change it to November. I hate to push that off just because of this, sorry. But it's, that might be our very, very last game of like,
Your daughter's a senior.
yeah, yeah.
Well, and in all honesty, by the time we get these letters out,
Yeah, that's true.
give them time to
That's no great
respond.
delay. Yeah.
I mean, a month might be cutting it too close to get people to attend.
And then maybe on the 11th, we could pull together, we could still have the meeting on the 11th and I could even have one of my other staff attend. But we could pull together a few other things and at least I could have the beginning slides of the process for you guys. We could have the link to look at of all the documents and maybe that, I apologize.
No,
that would work.
I mean, I
out.
think that would be good because I think it would also give us time to prepare. I would hate to like say, okay, we're sending this letter out after tonight. Next meeting, we're gonna have people in here that we're supposed to discuss this with, and we really don't even have our outline of what we're kind of gonna, I mean. We've discussed it, but I feel like that'll give us an extra meeting to kind of
Prepare.
make
Okay.
sure we all know how we're gonna handle it.
It's November 8th.
Yeah, I
That's
saw that.
election
It's
day.
election day, so we may probably need to move that one, which if we have this enough time ahead, I can find out when we have an ability to move. Let me do this. Let me find out, because, so sometimes we can do them, obviously, every other Tuesday, the first and third Tuesdays are city council meeting nights. Wednesdays, we sometimes have to avoid because of court, but we can sometimes do a Wednesday. And then Thursdays are ARB, Board of Adjustment, ARB. So either we want to move it to the very, like, we could move it up. Instead of being on the 8th, we could possibly move it to October 25th. Which is a Tuesday and it's the last Tuesday of the month, so it's not a
PCB. Police Committee.
PC is
But
meeting.
you could move it, there's no part that I see on the city calendar on the 9th, so you could move it from the 8th to the 9th.
If people were available on the 9th,
That's Wednesday the night.
Wednesday the 9th versus Tuesday the 8th.
That works fine for me.
Me too. Pretty sure.
And this is early enough that we can move it and put it in the letter correctly.
Right.
And then I can book the room and make sure, and we can move it to the council chambers possibly. If we feel like that might be a little bit easier to have more screens up and be able to do different things like that if you wanted to.
And it might be more comfortable if we do have a number of attendees that could get a little close.
Yeah. Okay, so how about, let's do November 9, Wednesday, and we've got 6 of our members here. We're only missing Doug and James. But then that would give us the October meeting to be able to have a draft of some of the slides and some of the presentation.
Yeah.
And give us a little bit more time, and thank you, that would give me that night so that I don't miss that. I can get it moved, and I'll confirm that, and I'll see if I'll try to get it booked for the council chambers. And move that to be Wednesday, November 9. Okay. Anything else?
So I guess, kind of what is our plan going forward after the November meeting where we do our public information? Because I feel like that's gonna be a question that is gonna be asked, what next?
So if we have that much extra time, you could prepare almost everything that you need for the public hearing. I mean, that amount of time gives us the time to put together, like, I know what I have to have in terms of the way that the list of documents reads. So you could, if we knew on the 9th that we had the information session, that would give us enough time to put ads in the paper that you could either do the public hearing, the December HPC meeting, or you could do the public hearing, the January HPC meeting.
You know, last session, we discussed with the information that we'll have to gather, and it will be us doing it. I think the comfort level was, let's have that done before we have any of the proceeding that starts the calendar rolling. Because once that calendar starts rolling, we're not going to have any time to really do anything, because some of those deadlines are 10 days, 2 weeks apart. And we're not even going to be meeting in that timeline.
Yeah,
So I think it would be a good idea, because we have an overview of the process and your example of the Marshall District. Maybe after next meeting, we would concentrate on getting our presentation and our meeting together, and then have the public information session. And then after that, start designating who's going to do what as far as the actual research and the finding of fact that will be needed to be submitted. And once we have all that together and everybody's feeling comfortable with it, then I think it would be a good idea to start the proceeding to have the clock rolling so we can meet those deadlines and not have an oops in there.
But like tentatively early next year.
I think, yeah, that's what I was thinking, because I think that seems like a really good plan, and maybe aim for January is when we're gonna do it. So we can be ready to go. I mean, if it slides, I mean, you don't, it slides like this meeting. If it does, it does, but we can aim for January, because we certainly don't want to do something in December and then through the holidays, we're supposed to do
Yeah.
something that doesn't make any sense. For a group of volunteers, so that's not gonna probably work out. So just aim for January and see how it goes, and
And I can at least get you before the next meeting, a tentative schedule, that if we aimed for the January HPC meeting, what does that mean in terms of the timeline, just as a scenario to be able to work with?
That would be helpful.
I know in the past we've discussed turning like restaurant homes and Joyville homes into another walk, albeit maybe like a virtual one, because it can't be a physical one. Is that something that we're still anticipating doing after this process is done? That's something we're interested in.
For me right now, I'm like, let's keep our eye on this ball. And then, move forward with a possible other project after that, because I think the more focused we stay on this, the more efficient we'll be in not stringing out our timeline.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good idea and a worthy projects.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of like, and maybe I can jot this down in between this meeting and the next meeting, possible questions we might be faced with, which one of it's gonna be what happens after if this gets approved. I know we've talked about the benefit of, landmark status, but like, I guess, Mara, when the Marshall Business District, when that was approved, kind of what happened once it was approved?
Wasn't anything for a while. And then it was interesting, the one vacant lot in the middle of the district was sold and a new structure was built. And it was a modern structure. A modern structure, I think both of you will probably remember. Echoed volumetrically what had been there in terms of a two-story commercial structure. They did do a lower level storefront. And then on the upper level, they had sort of punched openings for where like the windows of the historic building had been for their privacy screening for their patio, for their live workspace. So that's the only thing really that's happened in that district, other than there's been a couple other little businesses that have done a few little things.
Does the city do anything? I'm assuming maybe on the website or anything to recognize this as a city.
I mean, it's
historic
just
landmark, or-
in all the other historic documentation. Yeah.
And they don't get any kind of certificate or anything like that.
so you mean almost more of like a celebration of some sort.
Well, just, I mean,
that's
was
dramatic,
anything,
but
yeah, like, I
something.
think sometimes people think, okay, we're going through this process. Is
Yeah.
there anything?
I think it was really cool. There was one single home that went through the process after the Marshall Store District. And it was a house that if you saw what it originally like, or what it had looked like when the developer got it. And then what it looked like after, it did make it into a magazine. There was a whole article about it. I mean, it really, they brought it back, restored it, did this whole thing, and then came in and got the designation after the fact. And they had a little bit of it, they had a party, and I think they had an open house and people got to go see it, and there was a really cool magazine article. So, I mean, it is something that I think that we might be able to get some press from. There might be some other things that could happen, and we could also remember, if some of you remember, there wasn't a person who contacted me from Brentwood who was trying to work on their process too. So we try to tie in with them and see if they want to do something similar with their local district.
in order to kind of move forward on our preparation for the public information session, do we want to just designate who's going to cover what in the session so we can start getting our thoughts together, and maybe Mara can get it in a PowerPoint, and maybe we could even do a run through at our next meeting, just to make sure everybody's kind of familiar with the content, and we can coordinate our remarks with the slides and that kind of thing. Maybe we could do something like that.
Yeah, if anyone wants particular bullet points for their slide. Yeah, we can pull together, I can pull together a PowerPoint with placeholders for things, and then we could do a run through it the next day.
And even if we don't have a run through, maybe you could get whoever's speaking, you can get them those slides so they can
Yeah.
just have it in their own head what their remarks are going to be.
So the question is, I know this is what Carol had suggested was an intro, something about local historic districts, frequently asked questions, misconceptions, what the process was, questions and answers. Those would be sort of the 5. I'm taking on the process. Anyone else want to take on anything else?
I'll do, just based on what's on the city website, I'll do the overview of the purpose of a local district, and a little bit about FAQs and dispelling misconceptions. If anybody else wants some of that, that's fine, but I'll, I'll do those.
So what's left?
Oh, do you want to do
Intro,
anything on
no.
restaurants? Make some remarks, because you know that.
I can do that.
Yeah, we
Okay.
were talking about that.
So maybe just a place, where would you want that in the order to talk about the lesson?
I think that should be toward the
We start
beginning.
out with it that way. We have some sort of introduction to us.
So do we want that as the chair, you do a brief intro? And then go to Angela for some about the Lustron specifically. And then Carol to the local historic and some frequently asked questions.
Yes.
And then I can throw in, I've got a number of pictures, articles, you can tell me which ones you might want in there or not in there. Those are pretty easy to throw into the PowerPoint.
Okay. Yeah, like these are really good. I think this is great stuff here because it's local stuff. So that's
Yeah.
interesting. That's
I
really-
definitely think the articles specifically about the houses built in Webster.
Yeah.
The 12
Yeah.
houses are the one that listed the original owner names and the street address.
It could be fun to have just one slide that has a bunch of these, like finding houses for sale and we need lots.
Maybe not the article from the 80s saying nobody would buy them.
Yeah. Might not be, but that needs to be in our document. Okay. So for the next meeting, I can get a, pull together at least the bones of the PowerPoint with my process questions. We'll have a list of all the documents, the various ones we have here and these additional ones here. I'm gonna book the council chambers for Wednesday the 9th. We're gonna make a couple updates to this and get these letters out ASAP for the 9th, because it's better to give people more time than less. And then I'll get you a brief timeline for if we did a January public hearing, how it would move forward. Great.
That's good.
Can I ask the one letter that you included about the Joyville homes? Did Stephen read that one?
No, I feel like there was. Can't remember, there was one that Angela sent me at one point, like, we had a couple real generics, and then at one point Angela had outdated one, because there was one that had too much and then it had gotten less, and yeah, I can't remember. Stephen didn't do any letters. Okay.
I think that there was one that was kind of a combination of the address both Lustron and Joyville. And it was like a draft. And then we decided to just focus on one at a time,
Yeah,
if I'm recalling correctly.
yeah, I think
Something
you're
like that.
correct.
Yeah.
I think you're correct. So I'll do this as, this will be on letterhead. This will also be, but I'll put them as two separate sheets within the envelopes.
And I'm not trying to get ahead of us or try to focus on something other than this, but obviously we had discussed doing next the Joy Built Homes, which would be a much larger scale project, and we discussed possibly forming a subcommittee. How soon is too soon, or as far as like trying to get that going?
Anyone who wants to
I mean-
take that on can go ahead and take that on.
I mean, I understand if we should wait until we see how this
Yeah.
kind of goes, so I'm not even talking about like anytime soon this year, but just if we wanted to start thinking about that, if it's still possible.
I mean,
start.
Once we get into January, I mean, once that ball gets rolling, there's not much else that you all are doing. It really is back on staff, that we're making presentations at the public hearing, and then the public hearing at council, and then we draft the ordinance. And so those are the elements that we're gonna be doing. So, I mean, once you get past, if we started the hearing in January, between January and February would be the time to start rolling with volunteer time onto something new.
Do we need to be present at the public hearing or?
I would probably go just out of
Yeah.
interest.
Yeah.
I guess more so if we're able, if we're allowed to attend. or-
Oh, yeah, you're totally allowed to attend, and I think in one of the past ones. At least, I think maybe the chairperson stood up and sort of had a couple remarks. That the whole group had put together, saying this is the reason why we brought it forward. But again, I vaguely remember this one. It was one of those ones where it had gone through everything. And then suddenly it was like at council, and I'm the one who does the council hearing, so it was like, oh, Mara is gonna do this council hearing, and so I was a little disconnected from the other part of the process at that time. But it went fine.
Done now.
All right, if there isn't anything else. I
Do
think
you-
we have some tests.
Do you wanna, oh,
Oh, no, sorry.
I know it's on Lestron, but do you want a council update
Oh, yes. See,
briefly?
yeah, yeah.
So I think when we were here last, I mentioned the council, the charter review advisory board. That we were seeking applicants to be on that, so we had interviewed 30 people, which was fantastic. And then we all kind of like made our list of 9. And so when we meet next week on Tuesday, we'll talk about like kind of who got the most votes and who that 9 are gonna be, and then they'll get to start work soon on ideas of ways we might wanna, update our charter and our constitution. So that's exciting. And then what's the other update that I had? Oh, this, I think it's probably interesting because most of us are interested in all things flooding these days, but MSD is going to come to the October 4th council meeting, and so that'll be a great venue. And then we're also in the works of scheduling a community meeting that would be like MSD and sustainability and green space. So that community members can kind of ask their individual questions there as well. So those are kind of 2 topics of interest that I know.
We said that was the October 4th council
Mhm.
meeting, that MSU meeting.
Yeah, they'll be at October 4th, and then the community meeting hasn't been scheduled yet, but we're working on a date for that. But that is in the works. And also on the October 4th meeting, I know there've been a lot of comments about like mowing and city lots, and with the budget issues, we've had staff that, reductions and all that, which is great. But Scott Davis from Parks and Rec is going to do a presentation about that also at the October 4th meeting, and kind of go through lot by lot, which is interesting. I met with Dr. Peoples last week about lots of things, but we were talking about that. And what I hadn't really realized is a lot of the lots that maybe not a lot, but some of the lots that the city has historically maintained are not actually the responsibility of the city to maintain. They might be like an easement that's owned by MSD or the railroad or homeowner or whatever. So I think kind of looking at that again too, and if it's owned by the Union Pacific, for example, like, should we really be maintaining that anyway? So I think that'll be interesting. Presentation too.
Quick question, the MSD portion, is that specifically addressing flooding issues this last event, or is that going forward, or what's the
Yes.
focus?
Yeah, I mean, it spurred on, it was, kind of. The reason that they're coming is because of the flooding issues that we've had and. But they'll also be addressing, I'm sure, like, working with the city before and what they can do, what they can't do. A lot of the discussions that. I've been listening to, I just didn't realize like how, there are a lot of boundaries, right? Like, what is the city's responsibility? What can we not do? What are we just the pass through for FEMA or SEMA or MSD? We don't want to speak for MSD, so that's another reason that the city wanted to invite MSD to come, so that we're not saying what MSD can and can't do, that they can speak to that themselves.
Good idea.
So I think that will be good. Yep. That's all.
Awesome. Want to have anything else? I think we've got a full agenda for next month.
Just a quick mention, I mentioned this to Mara before we got started. I did go to that online CLG grants application workshop. And it was very interesting, and it's also quite a process. I mean, we already knew that it was nothing we could meet the timeline for this year, but at some future date, when things have settled down a little bit, if y'all are interested, I can kind of give you an overview of the process and what's involved. And it was really interesting. And so just to kind of let you know that at some time future, we can take a look at that. And just a little tidbit, if you're interested in this kind of thing, I did not know that money that comes to the state is a sub-grant from the federal government. And it's the federal government's revenue from offshore drilling leases that actually comes to the state, specifically designated for preservation, and then comes out to CLGs and others. And they kind of gave us that as background for the reasons that we would have to meet both state and federal requirements for some of that stuff. But anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
It's interesting. It's very cool. Great. No one has anything else? We'll adjourn at 7:23. Have a good week, Michael.
Yep, thank you, you too.
You make gavel.